Thank you, Dan. And I appreciate everyone's patience. I may come across as slightly crackly and broken up. Apparently, we have quite the thunderstorm, rainstorm happening here in Virginia Beach, and it's been playing havoc with our network. So I apologize in advance. For those of you, first of all, welcome, and thank you, Dan, for allowing me to be part of this. I'm excited about it. We've been a long time supporter of AGZA, and so it's really exciting to see individuals going through the certificate course. As you know, we support that as well, and it's just an exciting time to be part of this kind of world, so to speak. As we talk about battery, there's obviously, as everyone knows here, there's a lot of misperceptions. So, my goal here today is not necessarily to rehash history and so forth. Some of this is review, but our goal in all of this is to help everyone ask better questions. And so we know about the misperceptions in general that are out there. Batteries don't run long enough. They're too expensive, and you can't get the job done. But we also know that the equipment is starting to catch up, and frankly, nowadays, it's in good shape. When you look at steel, a lot of you may not know that we started in 1926, and Andreas Steel actually invented the world's first electric chainsaw. So even though we are known for gas, electric is in our blood. So as we like to say, we have 100 years of tool manufacturing expertise. We're just changing the battery or the power packs, so to speak, that's driving it. So again, we look at those perceptions, and we know that today's battery tools are in fact delivering gas comparable performance, and that when you factor in the total cost of ownership, you're actually talking about cheaper operations. And of course, let's face it, whether it's you deciding to do it as a marketing advantage, or whether a municipality or other regulatory agency is forcing you to do it, converting to battery is a reality. So don't wait for those to hit you. And the reality is, whatever tool you need, we most likely have it in the battery world for you, including now zero-turn mowers and, of course, robotic mowers. So whatever your activity is, there's probably a tool for you. At the same time, I'm not here, again, and what I think I admire about Dan and AGZA is the idea of a responsible transition. Because we know the reality is, for instance, when you compare the performance of our BR800, the most powerful gas blower we have, and you compare it to the BGA300, our most powerful battery blower, when you look at the newtons, what you obviously come across is the fact that you're talking about 37% less blowing force. And for anybody on this call who has to deal with heaps of wet leaves, we all know that that has an impact on your operations. At the same time, though, when you compare the noise levels between those same two models, you're talking about 300% less noise. So why do I bring that up? Because when we're talking to those that are in a regulatory agency, let's make sure they understand the impact of just flat out banning or saying go to battery. It's not that the battery tools can't perform, but let's face it, it's not the same yet. But so really what we're talking about and asking, and what you should be doing, is comparing apples to apples. So in this case, as we know, we have a battery. We're just saying, take a look at the newtons and find units that have the similar blowing force. So in this case, the BR430, our gas powered, is the comparable unit. So you can immediately see that the battery unit is quiet. It is, however, if you're using the big backpack battery to get similar run times, heavier. Now you have options, and we'll address changing your SOPs in just a little bit. So let's talk real quick, and I think most of you have already done this, but I love how, it's a voltage world, so to speak, where everyone thinks that, well, 80 volts is better, or 60 volts is better, or what about 36 volts? Well, as we know, what we're really talking about is watt hours, the amount of work that can be done, which is your amp hours times watt hours. So what do I mean? You can have an 80-volt battery, but if it only can produce 2 amp hours, then you're only looking at 160 watt hours. Whereas a 36-volt battery like ours that can produce 7.8 amp hours, then you're looking at 281 watt hours. So bottom line is, when the voltage is different, the watt hours will allow you to be able to measure, quote unquote, how much fuel you have in the tank. And you can find that information on your battery. So again, it's just a matter of everyone doing their research to determine what's best for you. Now, I get asked a lot about runtime, and I think we've already talked about it a few times. I know Dan talks about it quite a bit, but it really has two elements. One is, the runtime of the battery life-wise on the job. We know that, as we just talked about, depends on battery capacity in watt hours. It depends on the tool. For instance, we know that a hedge trimmer can run almost 11 hours on a backpack battery, whereas the blower will only run about an hour and a half. It also depends on the application, as just like a gas tool. And of course, the tool setting, and we'll address that in just a little bit. What doesn't get talked a lot about and is important to a business owner is, what is the life cycle of your battery? How many charge cycles can you get? So for instance, on most of our batteries, in fact, almost all of them, you're looking at about 1,500 times that you can charge that from 0 to 100, back to 0, before the battery reaches a point where it can only take about 80% of its full life. It's still a usable battery, but it cannot fully charge, just like we experience with our cell phones. Our newest batteries, like the AP500, use a different kind of technology. Instead of cells, it uses plates, and you'll get 3,000 charge cycles out of that. And I can tell you, for most professional applications, that means you're talking about a battery that can go anywhere from 3 to 6 years before it's down to 80%. So a lot of things will depend on that. We'll get into charging in just a little bit. But the other aspect of this too, on the runtime, when you're looking at your batteries, is do your research. And does the battery deliver consistent power discharge across the entire life of the battery? Or in some cases, we've seen some batteries that give you peak performance early on, but then will taper off. And I know, again, I can only speak for our batteries, but they'll deliver consistent power to your tool all the way until it's fully discharged, and then just stop. And of course, when we talk about life cycle, let's remember recycling, please. It doesn't make much sense to be more green, quote unquote, and then just toss something into landfill. All of the steel dealers will take that battery back to be recycled. So let's real quick go over battery management, because frankly, now we know that's the bigger question. The tools perform. How do you manage the energy? What's the charging solution? How have you changed your SOPs to help your... First of all, most of the tools that I know, at least for us, can produce, will have 3 different power levels. So I know that on the gas world, and of course we still produce gas, we always taught the operators that they need to go full bore. right? It's actually better for the cleanliness of the machine. Battery is different. We need to encourage our guys to use the least amount of energy that can still get the job done. Use a lower setting and only use things like boost mode when you really need to plow through something like heavy grass. Now, we talk about charging and the charging solutions. Again, charging time depends on the capacity of the battery. So as you can see from this chart here, the energy content in watt hours will affect the charging time depending upon what charger you use. Now, I wanted to go into that just a little bit because I know guys have asked me, well, do I have to now put in a whole new breaker panel just to charge my 8, 10, 12 batteries? The answer to that is it depends. And as you can see here on this chart, how many batteries can you charge on a single 120 volt, 20 amp circuit? And you can see whether it's standard charger, quad charger, or speed charger, you can vary anywhere from 12 batteries in 5 hours to maybe, even speedily 3 batteries in 45 minutes. The one thing I will let you know now, just like we experience with our phones, I love speed chargers. I do not recommend them as a regular type of operation. Just like when you plug your phone into a speed charge, you're actually generating more heat and you're reducing the number of charge cycles that that battery will have on it. So as an emergency or quick recharge, great. But in general, you should be changing your SOPs to take advantage of slower charging and extend the life of your battery. Now, I will say that if you have a large shop, we have solutions for that as well. So in this case, our multi-charging unit off of a single 50 amp circuit can charge 30 batteries overnight. So again, depending upon what kind of operation you're running, that could save you $3,000 in electrician costs for not having to put in another breaker panel. It's a smart circuit. It monitors each of the chargers. And when they're done charging, it shuts off that particular aspect of the charger. So again, it's something for you to consider. So let's talk about true cost of ownership real quick. I know STIHL and many of the other manufacturers are there to help you with calculators. So whether it's how much battery charge and runtime is available, what charging costs are, and calculating what that will cost you. And at the same time, this is the one I think is most helpful, especially if you're having to convince someone else of the value of a higher upfront investment. You can take comparable gas unit, plug it in, and how much fuel you use and what the cost of fuel is, compare it to the cost of electricity, and you can immediately calculate what your cost savings are over time. And I would add that this calculator just calculates fuel difference. It doesn't factor in things like fuel mix, the lack of maintenance that's required in battery, or much less, less fuel filters, air filters, carburetor tune-ups. Again, that all affects your bottom line. So it's one of the reasons why we participate in the Green Zone Credit Program, because not only is it better for the environment, not only does it help you meet regulatory requirements, but frankly, it will help your bottom line if you take those other factors that we talked about into consideration. So what have we learned and what's the bottom line? We know that everyone on this call, for the most part, has already understood that, it's nothing to be afraid of. Let's start making that investment. If you haven't, then it really is start with a hedge trimmer. It's probably the best tool to get crew members who are diehard gas users moving over to battery. Think about the ultimate impact on your business for not going to battery. And then, as I pointed out, just ask better questions. Make sure you're investing in a platform that will give you all the tools, the durability, the dependability, the servicing dealer that's behind it to support you and your operation. And then finally, take advantage of whatever training you can to really get the crews thinking differently. Because let's face it, if the operators don't fully embrace this transition, it will never work. Ultimately, what we have seen though is once they get around to a different way of thinking and they get used to the idea of planning the battery and the charges and the recharging, they love battery equipment. And especially when we start talking about a younger workforce that may not have grown up like some of us with a dad working in a shop where maybe starting a piece of gas equipment doesn't come second nature to them, battery is just easier to use. So I'd like to just close by saying congratulations, well done. I want to thank AGZA for all of the work that they are doing to help with this transition. And if anyone on this call is looking for safety, operation, basic maintenance training, either on gas or battery, or would like to have additional battery product demonstrations, including our new zero-turn mower at no cost to you because we don't do direct sales, just visit this website and you can find your regional rep. So Dan, thank you again. I know there may not be time for questions, but if anybody wants to put questions in the chat, or Dan can share my contact information. But again, those training reps are your best resource. And with that, I'll turn it back to you, Dan. Thank you.